Okay, so why are we here? Yoga, of course. The purpose of this workshop is to explain what yoga really is about. Now, many people know about yoga. Yoga is very popular these days around the world. But there is a lot of mystery, a lot of dogma, and a lot of ignorance, frankly, around yoga. Hey, grab a cushion. There are some mats free here. What happened with yoga actually is that in the late 1990s, yoga became very popularized and commercialized. That is not in itself a bad thing. It's good if it's open to everybody. But before yoga was popularized and commercialized, it was rather obscure. And there is a reason why it was rather obscure. Because yoga is a very old science and practice that is written down in symbolical language, like all ancient books were written in symbolical language. There is a lot of misunderstanding surrounding yoga. So yoga, before it was popularized, was only open to a small public, small number of people. If you want to commercialize something, popularize something, you need to throw everything out that is difficult. You need to throw out everything that is mysterious, on the surface doesn't seem to make sense, etc. Things you cannot explain in a rational way. So basically what happened is they threw out all the valuable things of yoga to popularize it, to commercialize it. And what's left? Exercise, physical exercise. That most of the time is not in line with what yoga is about. So today I will explain very systematic, point by point, what yoga means and what it has to offer the human being who is practicing, and the difference between the modern approach to yoga and the traditional approach to yoga. Sometimes when I talk about the difference between the two, it seems that I'm skeptical and not approving of the modern approach to yoga. That is not the case. Just like with the dogs, everything is connected. When something on the surface seems to be bad, there is always a good side to it. And the popularization of yoga has led to many people, like many of you, among many of you guys, opening the door for many people who otherwise would not have entered a yoga studio because it seems so weird and obscure. And very often people who start with modern yoga, popularized yoga, which is mainly physical exercise, they little by little develop more and more interest in what yoga really is about. And in the end you end up sitting here, hungry for more knowledge and insight. I know from experience that most of you have experienced yoga, that you have many questions that never got answered, and eventually it made you end up here. So I'm going to try to answer those questions. I didn't even introduce myself. My name is Ron. Yeah, I said I'm a stupid old Dutch stubborn yogi, which is to say. My name is Ron. I've been involved with yoga for the last 36 years, 37 almost. I've been in Korea for 23 years, gave up my nationality, Dutch, and have Korean nationality now. Something that the universe made me do also. People think I'm stupid, giving up my Dutch nationality and adopting 2 dogs and all the other stupid things I did. Life is wonderful. So, my name is Ron. I'm Dutch originally, but now I'm Korean. And yoga is my life, and my life is yoga. That is the true fusion or unification that yoga is talking about. So I'm usually a very quiet person, very boring, except when it is about yoga. When it is about yoga, it can go on for hours and days, and there is no end to it. So let me explain a little bit why I'm so passionate about yoga, so intrigued. So what is yoga? No, let's start with the question, how old is yoga? Anybody? I know you know, or you think you know. How old is yoga? You have read it in a book, or somebody told you that it's 5,000 years old, right? So now a question to the Korean people. How old is Korean culture? Right, 5,000 years old. What a coincidence. So 6,000 years ago there were no Korean people, no Korean culture? Of course there were. Where does the number 5,000 come from? It's 5,000 years ago that people started writing down things. People started recording things. So if we research very deeply, we find information about Korean culture and yoga and many other things in the world until 5,000 years ago. And before that, well, if you read the Bible, before that, there was nothing. The earth was created around that time. That is symbolical language. So how old is yoga really then? Yoga is as old as mankind becoming conscious. Strange, but not so strange if you understand what yoga really is, other than an exercise. When mankind started developing consciousness, the transition from animal life, instinctive life, to developing intellect, people started asking questions. Who am I? Why am I here? Why is it so cold? And why is it so hot? What is this big red ball up there in the sky, and why does it move? And at night, all these twinkling lights and this big white ball there that is changing shape every night. Mankind started asking questions about themselves, about the environment, and that became, throughout tens of thousands of years, more and more sophisticated. That is yoga. Yoga is the science of humankind. Yoga is the science of life. More precise, it turned into the science of the control of life. Is that only limited to India because that's where yoga comes from? No. Yoga is an esoteric science. We call it esoteric science. Science of life, science of humankind is an esoteric science that you find in every culture, on every continent. It's only that at the moment yoga, what we label yoga, stands out. But if you study philosophy, you're doing exactly the same, in fact. Now maybe you lose interest in yoga after telling you this, but wait a minute, we're not there yet. Because there is a huge potential in real yoga. And that is the potential for change, the potential for transformation, personal growth and development, emancipation, awakening, and after the awakening, constantly expanding consciousness. And with all that, you develop more and more control over yourself, your life, and even where you go in the future. Can you believe that? Sophia does, because she experienced it. This course that we are preparing for, some of you will join, some of you will be satisfied with the workshop only today, which is perfectly okay. The course is only 4.5 months. Sometimes I jokingly say or think that we should start making before and after photographs, because people truly change, people truly transform. Internally, but it also leads to your impression, your expression. So there is, if yoga is done right, in contrast with just purely physical exercise, it has huge implications for the practitioner, marvelous implications. So let's have a look where I got all this from. Because I'm saying that yoga is the science of the control of life. You can question that. Then I will tell you, look at the meaning of the word yoga. You know what it means actually? Anybody? Your yoga teachers, if you have ever been told, probably said, oh, it means union. If you are a stubborn Dutch yogi like I am, you would ask more and say, what kind of union? And how does it work? How do you bring about that kind of union you were talking about? You usually are left with more questions than answers when you go that path. The word yoga, which Indian people, when you talk with Indian people and the conversation comes to yoga, they don't say yoga. They say yog. They don't pronounce the A. Very interesting. The origin of the word yoga from Sanskrit is yuj. The English word, English, like other European languages, are Indo-European languages, which explains the link. Yoke. You know what a yoke is? Many people don't know what a yoke is because it's something that we don't use anymore. It's an appliance that the farmer uses to harness the energy of a big animal. The Dutch word have a look what is happening here. Very interesting. The Dutch word is juk. It's all the same meaning. It's not about the words, it's about the meaning of the word, which is, it's an appliance to control energy. Is that important? Yes. Just look at the concept of laser beam. Energy in itself, even if you have a whole bag full of it, doesn't mean anything. Doesn't lead to anything. Or worse, it can lead to a lot of destruction if it is not controlled. If you look at a nuclear power plant, for example. A laser beam. A laser beam is so powerful it can cut through steel. Not flimsy little thin steel, but armored steel. Like 30 centimeters, 1 foot thick steel. Laser beam, which is actually just light. You can't touch it. It's energy. What is the principle of the laser beam? You have a huge generation of energy, but now you have the technology to harness that energy and transform it into a very tiny ray of light, of energy. It looks tiny, but it is a huge amount of energy that is very strongly concentrated. And it cuts through steel and reinforced concrete. So powerful. That is the principle behind this. The yoke was invented by people who transformed from being hunter-gatherers into agriculture. Well, agriculture means you have to work very hard. You settle down, that's comfortable in a way, instead of roaming around and never knowing if you can catch an animal to eat tomorrow. So you settle down, you plant a crop, but you have to plow the field with your hands. You have to carry water to your field with your hands, with your tiny little body, only 60, 70, 80 kilo body mass. So while you are breaking your back in the field, you look out over the tundra, you look out over the prairie, and you see these cows and these horses and all these animals there. While you are sweating and breaking your back, they're just doing nothing. They eat a little bit of grass, they eat a little leaf from the tree, and for the rest they're just lying around doing nothing. So the human, becoming conscious, at some point thought, hey, I am only 60, 70 kilo. My ball of energy is small. That is why I have to work so hard. There is a ball of energy there, a body mass of 1,000 kilo. And it is just doing nothing, wasting its time. And I'm breaking my back. What if I can harness that energy and let that animal do the hard work for me? Pull my plow and carry the harvest home and the water from the river to the field. That is the yoke. So it's purely about control of energy. Now yoga, believe it or not, is about energy. I will explain why. Yoga is Oriental, right? You know the principle of Oriental medicine? When you are sick, you don't treat the symptom, which is the physical body or the manifestation, the physical manifestation of the disease. Oriental medicine treats the cause of the symptom, which is a disturbance in the energy circulation. There is a disharmony or a blockage. So Oriental medicine is based on the idea that if you restore the energy flow, the disease will disappear. Yoga is exactly like that. That is not the impression that you get when you go to another yoga class. Because your teachers will constantly bombard you with details about your physical body. If you do a teacher training course, you have to memorize the whole physical anatomy. Ironically, yoga has no physical anatomy. And the whole reason for that is, yoga focuses on restoring the energy flow. Not the symptoms, the manifestation of the disease caused by disturbed energy circulation. No, restore the energy circulation. And automatically you will get healthier, stronger, and any existing disease will gradually be healed, naturally. Now, most yoga teacher training programs, for a large part, the biggest part, exist out of physical anatomy. We don't. You confirm. And I think some of you who have done a course before, you will confirm that is correct. We have no physical anatomy. We do have subtle anatomy, where you learn about the energy, where you learn that if you do yoga correctly, it indeed leads to the healing aspect, the bringing into harmony of the yin and the yang energies, that leads to greater health, strength, etc., healing of disease. And the rest of the time that we don't spend on physical anatomy, you learn many other interesting aspects about yoga, the yoga philosophy. Because yoga philosophy is not a boring theory, it's about you. It explains to you who you are, why you do what you do, how you function, why you experience conflict and misery in your daily life, and how you can avoid it. So yoga is very practical, not mysterious, not dogmatic. If you are able to read between the lines of the symbolical texts. If you take the text literal, you become a radical, an extremist. The same as with religious books. If you take it literal, you start chopping off people's heads and you justify it with the holy text. Now, yoga doesn't tell you that you should chop off people's heads, but it has other things that if you take it literally, it may lead to self-harm. While the first principle in yoga is non-violence, self-harm is violence. So you learn about those kind of things. Very practical, no nonsense. And suddenly those symbolical texts come alive in a very wonderful way. Suddenly it all starts making sense. But it also means that there is only one way to practice yoga. And that is in a very systematic way. Not by every day practicing a little bit. That is good, of course, but it's not efficient. It's not really bringing about transformation. Transformation is brought about by a very systematic approach. You exercise because exercise helps you to generate energy and to harmonize that energy. But on top of that, you learn what is happening with you as a result of that energy work that you do. Not all yoga classes are modern yoga. There are other yoga classes that are traditional, not so many, but there are. And throughout the years that I'm teaching yoga, I have been visited by people who came to me and said, Ron, I need your help. I've been practicing yoga diligently for years now. But it seems that the harder I practice, the more miserable I become. Sometimes crying. what happens if you practice yoga correctly? Your consciousness changes. Your heart opens up. You become more compassionate. You start to become conscious of your past and other people's misery. That is, in the Bible, that is called the penitence of the holy person, the holy man or the holy woman. But the reason why those people are suffering is because they're only practicing. Change is occurring, and they start to suffer because they don't understand why. So the philosophical part is the foundation on which this change has to take place. You practice, bring about change, and your study with me teaches you what is happening, why it is happening, and if it causes misery, conflict, there is an answer how to deal with that. Very practical. So I should have asked you, when I asked you how old is yoga, the next question should have been, how many yogas are there? 100? 500? Only one. There is only one yoga. And that's yoga. Yoga is a science. A human science, science of life, that consists of the maintenance, which is your asana practice, energy control, and meditation, mind control. Then there is the philosophical part. One cannot go without the other, because then disasters happen. Then suffering, misery occurs. And that is the one sad part of the commercialization of yoga. It only focuses on exercise. And all the rest has been thrown out in order to open the door and allow as many people to come in as possible. But as yoga teachers, we have to take our responsibility. If I teach yoga, and I teach only the part that brings about the transformation, and half of my students ends up becoming more sensitive, more conscious, and as a result of that, ending up with all kinds of questions about life, essential questions about the self, the past, experiences, memories, and what have you, which all come to the surface as a result of your proper yoga practice. I am responsible for your misery. If I only gave you the tools to bring about the transformation, but I didn't give you the insight and the other toolbox with which you can constructively deal with the transformation that has taken place, it's my fault. But that's not how people see this. People only see numbers of people equals money in the bank. And the rest, there is no connection. Which also shows that they are not real yogis, because if you are a real yogi, that connection is undeniable. If I were not a yogi and I met this dog in the park, I would never have adopted him. I would have thought the same way the people that warned me and thought, oh my God, he's pitiful, but somebody else has to do it because that's not for me. It was for me. That's why it came onto my path. Only yogi sees that. See? Funny word, huh? Dutch language is very funny. Juk. Juk. Or yoke. Yoke in Korean is... See? So we can blame the Indians because it's Indo-European language. So, energy. Modern scientists like Einstein, they came to the conclusion that energy is infinite, unbreakable. As an individual, as a human being or an animal, you have an amount of energy. I said it's infinite, but I didn't say that it's unlimited. Because your energy is limited. You only have a certain amount of energy. Now the human being, without knowing, on a daily basis wastes a lot of energy. Precious energy that therefore you cannot use towards your future, towards your goals, towards anything else that is important in your life. So most human beings, in a way, are very inefficient and ineffective in their daily lives. And we go through the motions, taking care of our family, or taking care of the task that we have in our jobs. And that's it, because there's not much energy left for real personal evolution, growth, development. That's what you do with yoga. Look, a human being Human being is like a house. But it's a house in a particular place. It's a house in Siberia. Very cold in Siberia, although because of climate change is warming up there too. But it's very cold in Siberia. So you build your house and you install a boiler. Then you come home from work in the cold. You enter your home and you turn the boiler on. Because it's so cold, you turn it up to 10. And yet, like a human being, the house is losing all its precious energy. Because when it was built, they installed only one layer pane glasses. A single pane glass. There is no glass wool between the walls and the ceiling, the roof. It's not insulated. So while you're generating a lot of heat with your boiler at 10, spending a lot of energy, wasting a lot of energy, it goes out through the windows, the roof, the walls. And although you spend a lot of money on gas or electricity to heat up the house, it never becomes really cozy and warm. So you're smart. You order 3-layer pane glass, insulated. You start installing glass wool and other insulating materials, the floor, the walls, the roof. Now you come home and you turn your boiler to 3. And the house, because it doesn't waste all this precious energy anymore, doesn't lose all the heat, becomes very cozy and warm. It's a model of a human being. Modern human being doesn't work in the field, doesn't do hard physical labor. And yet, one of the most complaints I hear is, I'm so tired. Why are we so tired if we don't spend our energy through physical activity. What we overlook is that the biggest waste of energy goes through the mind, because the mind for a large part functions subconsciously. It is worries, doubts, and fear and desires, ego, the lower emotions and desires that cause a huge loss of energy. We are all uninsulated houses with a boiler at 10, and yet we never become cozy and warm, which translates into well-being and health. And you don't know why. So you go to the biggest industry in the world is the health industry. So you go to the doctor and you spend a lot of money and you're going nowhere. Even you go to a yoga class and you spend a lot of money and you're still not going anywhere. Because they don't teach you how to insulate the house. If you practice and study yoga correctly, that is exactly what you do. It's a process similar to installing 3-layered window panes and insulation in the floor, the walls, and the roof of the house. And you do that, of course, by generating energy and developing consciousness of your subconscious functioning. Your mind is busy 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but you don't know it. Through yoga, little by little, it is a process that takes time, but little by little and more, you start becoming conscious on all those aspects in your functioning that cause that huge energy loss. That is why you become healthier, stronger, and develop a sense of well-being. And then you start ending up making stupid jokes like I always do. Just kidding. Everything is energy. Everything depends on energy in your life. And you can take control of it. If you practice yoga correctly. And it really is not that difficult, you know. But, you know, you have in the Bible the concept of the doubting Thomas. And you think, oh yeah, stupid. Doubting Thomas is stupid. I'm not like that. But you know where the concept comes from? The doubting Thomas is the person that doesn't believe in energy, in spirit. Because spirit is pure energy. The Bible is a religious book. So, what is the problem with real yoga? It's not about bones and joints and hips and back and what have you, or the perfect yoga pose. It's about energy. But now we get lost. Because what is energy? You can't touch it, you can't smell it, you can't see it, you can't taste it. So if you can't see, taste, smell, hear, see, then it doesn't exist. That is a doubting Thomas, and we are all doubting Thomases. My strong point is to explain all this in very practical, no-nonsense terms, so that all the mystery and dogma disappears. Because mystery and dogma, why do mystery and dogma occur? Out of ignorance. There is a text written in symbolical language. You try to make sense of it, and you can't. So you just give it some crazy explanation. That is how dogma and mystery comes into being. But if you live yoga day by day and put it into practice in your daily life, you start more and more becoming conscious of the meaning behind the symbolism. And the meaning is very simple, very refreshing. Everything starts making sense. All the pieces of the puzzle fall into place in a very natural way. And you really don't have to practice yoga every